I want to bring in MS Now Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian. Kevin Fry is covering Capitol Hill, and Barrett Berger is a former federal prosecutor. Ken, what are we hearing from U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro about this decision to drop this investigation?
Well, let's be clear, Chris. This is an abject surrender by the U.S. Attorney in Washington, Jeanine Pirro. She's trying to put the best face on it by suggesting that the Inspector General of the Federal Reserve will now launch an investigation into these cost overruns on this renovation. But in point of fact, the Inspector General has been reviewing this project for some time. You can just go on their website where they disclose their audits and investigations. And as a matter of course, they would and have been reviewing a massive multi-billion-dollar renovation like this, which has been the subject of has been beset by cost overruns. So there's nothing new about the Inspector General investigating. It's Pirro's way of sort of saying that there's still some investigation or review, and there is. But the matter of fact is that she has dropped a criminal investigation, which a federal judge has already branded as essentially a retaliatory exercise with no basis in allegations of criminal wrongdoing. Remember, Judge Boasberg quashed the subpoenas in this case and said that this was clearly an attempt by the Justice Department to try to retaliate against Jerome Powell, to try to intimidate him into doing their bidding on the policy side. Donald Trump wants him to lower interest rates and wants to browbeat him, essentially. And Pirro was running this investigation. My understanding, or the belief inside the Justice Department, is that this wasn't just a Pirro decision, that Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general, participated. The White House may have been involved. They had a statement ready to go as soon as this was announced. So this was essentially a surrender by the Trump administration for strategic reasons, because they want to get their nominee for Fed chair confirmed, and Senator Thom Tillis was standing in the way of that as long as this investigation was pending, Chris.
Barrett, which brings me to a question about an investigation like this, and I think this is the third time that they've looked into it and have not had any charges come out of it. So what kind of time, manpower, effort goes into that, and is it inevitable it's taking away from investigations into people who might actually have done something wrong that could be prosecuted?
Yeah, great question. So in the normal course, this actually would have gone the reverse order. You would have had the Inspector General do an investigation and then make a criminal referral if the IG found that there was something, criminally liable or something, particularly criminally nefarious going on here. What you don't usually have is prosecutors' offices jumping in to start an investigation without any actual evidence of criminal conduct. And just overspending on a government project doesn't necessarily equal criminal intent. As Judge Boasberg said pretty clearly, the government was not able to proffer any evidence of criminal wrongdoing to support their subpoenas, which is why he quashed them, exactly as Ken said. So what has the government been doing all this time? Exactly as you said, spending money, using resources, trying to do this investigation that both the IG's office probably had already started and should have been the ones to do in the first place.
Well, let me ask you, and maybe this isn't a fair comparison, but if you feel you've been wrong, you can go to criminal court. You can also go to civil court, where the standard of proof, the burden of proof, is different, right? Is this a similar kind of thing? So there's going to be no criminal prosecution of any kind. There aren't going to be any indictments, but could feasibly an inspector general do something?
Certainly. And the Inspector General can recommend civil charges. They can also, if they found that criminal charges were appropriate, they can't actually bring criminal charges, but they could make a referral to a prosecutor's office. So civil charges, a civil lawsuit, absolutely, that could be a remedy if it's appropriate. But I think it's pretty clear here that there won't be criminal charges, even though Jeanine Pirro kind of left the issue open. I have to imagine that if they could have brought a criminal case, they would have, because this is really embarrassing for the department at this point to have such a public probe and then to have to back away from it.
So, Kevin, we also touched on this with Ken. This development came after a pretty public pressure campaign from Republican Senator Thom Tillis. Explain the role he played and what happens now.
Yeah, so, Senator Tillis is not running for re-election, and that has freed him up in many ways to be a check on the White House and kind of freely, openly express concern about some of the things the White House is doing. This has been one of those areas where he has dug in, basically saying that as long as this DOJ probe is ongoing, I'm not voting to confirm this nominee, even though he says that he supports the nominee. He likes Kevin Warsh. He believes he is extraordinarily credentialed for this position. The committee that he serves on, the banking committee that is the first step for this nomination, is split 13-11. So if Tillis votes no, that's a deadlock. It cannot advance. And so now the assumption is, based on what Tillis has been saying, that he would now vote to support Warsh's nomination. We have still not heard from Tillis. I pinged his team. He's not posted anything publicly. So we're waiting to see what exactly his feedback is to this news from this morning, especially because Pirro left open the possibility of relaunching this probe down the road should she see fit. We have heard from Senator Elizabeth Warren, the top Democrat on the banking committee. She still very much has concerns about this nominee, introducing kind of a macro perspective here, saying this is just an attempt to clear the path for Senate Republicans to install President Trump's sock puppet. I believe she meant puppet as opposed to pocket. Kevin Warsh as Fed chair. Anyone who believes Donald Trump's corrupt scheme to take over the Fed is fooling themselves. The Senate should not proceed with the nomination of Kevin Warsh. We don't know exactly the scheduling yet. We know the committee hearing, the confirmation hearing, where they had a chance to question him, was earlier this week. So presumably the vote on whether to advance his nomination would be coming in the next few weeks.
I just want to circle back, if I can, Barrett, because you heard what Jeanine Pirro suggested. Let's assume that Warsh goes through. He's the new Fed chair. Do you think there's any reasonable possibility they'll reopen this investigation, or is that more face-saving statement?
I think it's unlikely. Again, if they had evidence of criminal wrongdoing, number one, they would have presented it to Judge Boasberg in the hearing where they were trying to defend their subpoenas. So I think we would have seen at least some of that already. Number two, if they could have brought these criminal charges, they probably would have. It's rare for DOJ to back off an investigation when they've been public about it like this. Now, obviously, if new information comes up, based on the IG's investigation, certainly, the threat of a criminal prosecution can always sort of be hanging over him. But I think it would be unlikely at this point.